The fluorescent lights of the Dallas airport terminal buzzed overhead, a stark contrast to the sinking feeling in my stomach. "Handle this yourself, Rachel," my sister said, her voice tight. "You're stronger than you think." Those words, meant to be encouraging, felt like a slap in the face. Kevin, my brother, just nodded, avoiding my eyes. They were leaving me, Carol Evans, stranded at the airport, just hours before my scheduled surgery. 37 years. 37 years I'd spent caring for them, putting their needs before my own, and this was how it ended. "But Dot, our flight isn't for another 2 hours," I stammered, clutching my boarding pass like a lifeline. "We can still go together." Rachel shook her head, her freshly styled hair bouncing. "No, Carol, we've decided it's best if we head back. You're a grown woman. You can manage this on your own." "Manage this," I repeated, the words catching in my throat. This wasn't just a quick trip to the grocery store. This was major surgery. I was supposed to have their support, their comfort. We'd planned this trip for weeks, meticulously coordinating flights and hotels so they could be with me. "But, Julian," I started, referring to my fiancé, who was meeting me in Chicago. "He's expecting me. I need to be there." Kevin finally spoke, his voice gruff. "Call Julian. Explain the situation." He fished in his pocket, pulling out a crumpled $20 bill. "Here," he said, thrusting it towards me. "Get yourself a coffee or something." A wave of nausea washed over me. $20 for a coffee. While they abandoned me before surgery, I stared at the money, then back at their faces. The mask of concern they wore was thin, barely concealing the relief they felt at escaping their responsibility. I don't understand," I whispered, my voice trembling. This was more than just inconvenience. It was a deep betrayal, a severing of the bonds I thought we shared. "We had a plan," I reminded them, trying to hold back the tears welling in my eyes. Rachel sighed, a dramatic gesture I'd seen 1,000 times before. "Plans change, Carol. We need to be back for an important meeting." She wouldn't meet my gaze. The lie hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. "A meeting?" I asked, my voice rising. "More important than your sister's surgery." Kevin shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the bustling terminal. "It's complicated, Carol. Just take care of yourself." And with that, they turned and walked away, their figures disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, frozen, the $20 bill still clutched in my hand. The airport noise faded into a dull roar, the announcements blurring together into a meaningless drone. I felt a strange detachment, as if watching myself from outside my body. This was my family, the people I had dedicated my life to, the people I had always prioritized above all else. And they were leaving me, not just physically, but emotionally, abandoning me at my most vulnerable. I took a deep breath, the cool airport air stinging my nostrils. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, hot and angry against my skin. I wanted to scream, to rage, to beg them to come back. But what was the point? They had made their choice. Slowly, I lowered myself onto a nearby bench, the hard plastic cold against my thighs. I stared blankly at the departing flights displayed on the overhead screens. each destination a reminder of the journey I was supposed to be taking with my family. Now, I was alone, truly alone. I opened my purse, tucking the $20 bill inside. It felt dirty, tainted by their betrayal. I didn't want their pity money. I didn't want anything from them. A sudden surge of anger pulsed through me, replacing the numbness with a fiery resolve. If they thought I couldn't handle this, they were wrong, dead wrong. I would get to Chicago. I would have my surgery, and I would recover. Not for them, for me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed Julian's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice filled with concern. "Carol, everything okay? Your flight should be boarding soon." I swallowed hard, pushing down the lump in my throat. "Julian," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "there's been a change of plans. I wouldn't tell him about Rachel and Kevin. Not yet. This was my burden to bear, my battle to fight, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning. There was a strength within me I never knew existed, a quiet defiance sparked by their betrayal, and I intended to use it." The stale air of the Dallas airport terminal pressed down on me, heavy with the scent of jet fuel and disappointment. I clutched my boarding pass, the flimsy paper a pathetic symbol of hope in a world that had just shown me its cruelest side. "They just left," I whispered to myself, the words catching in my throat. "My own sister and brother. They abandoned me just hours before my crucial surgery. The people I had dedicated my life to supporting, the people I believed would be there for me, had simply vanished." Rachel had mumbled something about a family emergency. Kevin just kept checking his watch. And then, poof, they were gone, leaving me stranded, alone, and facing the biggest medical hurdle of my life with the bitter taste of betrayal burning in my mouth. I sank onto a hard plastic chair, the cold seeping through my thin blouse. 37 years. 37 years I had poured myself into my family. I had been the glue, the caregiver, the constant, unwavering support for Rachel and Kevin. I had put their needs before my own, celebrated their triumphs, and held their hands through their hardships. And this was how they repaid me, by abandoning me in an airport, hundreds of miles from home, hours before a surgery that terrified me. The tears came in hot and stinging, blurring the already hazy world around me. I had always been the strong one, the rock for everyone else. But in that moment, I felt like I was crumbling. "How could they?" I choked out, the words lost in the cavernous space of the terminal. The bustling crowds moved around me, oblivious to my quiet devastation, a sea of faces that offered no comfort. Each passing family, each laughing couple, each hug between parent and child was a sharp, painful reminder of what I didn't have, what I had lost. My hand trembled as I reached into my purse, pulling out my phone. I stared at Carol Evans' name, my daughter, my rock, my constant source of strength. Should I call her? Should I burden her with this fresh wave of disappointment? She had her own life, her own responsibilities, her fiancé Julian to think about. I had always shielded her from the worst of our family dramas, trying to create a stable, loving environment for her, even when my own world felt chaotic. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "I won't do that to her." I couldn't bear the thought of adding to her worries, of dimming her bright spirit with the shadow of my own pain. This was my battle, my burden to bear. I had always taken care of everyone else. It was time, perhaps, to learn how to take care of myself. The thought was both terrifying and strangely liberating. For so long, my identity had been intertwined with my role as caregiver, as the one who always put others first. But what if I didn't need them? What if I was stronger than I thought? I wiped my tears, a new resolve hardening my gaze. I would get through this. I would have my surgery. I would recover, and I would do it all without their help. I would prove to myself and to them that I didn't need their pity or their half-hearted apologies. I was more than just a sister, a caregiver, a support system. I was a woman, capable and resilient, and I would rise from this stronger than ever. I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. I walked towards the checking counter, my head held high, a small, defiant smile playing on my lips. The fear was still there, a knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of purpose. I checked my bag, went through security, and found my gate, each step a small victory. I bought a bottle of water and a sandwich, simple acts of self-care that felt strangely rebellious. As I sat at the gate, waiting for my flight, I started to think. This surgery, this experience, it was a turning point. It was a chance to redefine myself, to break free from the patterns of the past and embrace a new future. A future where I put myself first, where I prioritized my own happiness and well-being. A future where I didn't need anyone's validation or approval. I looked out the window at the planes taking off, soaring into the sky, and I felt a flicker of excitement. This wasn't just a trip for surgery. It was a journey of self-discovery. It was the start of something new, something powerful. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of anticipation, a sense of possibility, and somewhere deep down, a seed of an idea, a plan for a different kind of future, began to take root. A future where I would not only survive, but thrive. A future where they would regret ever leaving me behind. Rain lashed against the taxi window, blurring the Dallas skyline into a hazy mess, much like the way my own future felt. Just an hour ago, my sister Rachel and my brother Kevin had abandoned me at the airport, leaving me stranded hours before my scheduled surgery. "We can't do this, Carol," Rachel had said, her voice tight. "We have lives, responsibilities." Kevin just nodded dumbly, eyes glued to his phone. 37 years I'd spent caring for them, putting their needs before my own, and this was how they repaid me. Now, I sat huddled in the back of this cab, the sting of their betrayal a dull ache in my chest. The driver, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Rough day, hun?" she asked, her voice gentle. I just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "Where to?" she continued, her voice a welcome distraction. I fumbled with the hotel reservation printout, my hands still trembling. "The Magnolia Hotel, please," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. The driver, whose name tag read Linda, nodded and pulled away from the curb, the airport terminal receding into the distance like a fading bad dream. As we drove, Linda kept up a steady stream of cheerful chatter, pointing out landmarks and telling me about her favorite Dallas restaurants. I tried to focus to respond, but my mind kept replaying the scene at the airport. Rachel's pinched face, Kevin's averted gaze, those images were burned into my memory. "You okay, honey?" Linda asked again, her voice laced with concern. "You seem a little pale." I forced a smile, a weak, watery thing. "Just tired," I lied. "Long trip." Linda didn't push, but she did turn up the radio, filling the cab with the soothing sounds of a jazz station. The music, coupled with the rhythmic thrum of the windshield wipers, began to calm my frayed nerves. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me, trying to block out the hurt and anger that threatened to consume me. "My daughter's about your age," Linda said softly, breaking the silence. "She's a nurse, always taking care of everyone else." Something in her tone made me open my eyes. Linda's gaze met mine in the rearview mirror, and I saw a flicker of understanding there. "I've always taken care of everyone else too," I confessed, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "My parents, my siblings, it's always been me." Linda nodded sympathetically. "I get it," she said. "But sometimes we gotta take care of ourselves, you know." Her words struck a chord deep within me. All these years, I had focused so intently on the needs of others that I had forgotten my own. I had let myself become defined by my role as caregiver, as the responsible one. As the taxi pulled up to the hotel, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was as if Linda's simple words had flipped a switch in my mind. I paid the fare, adding a generous tip. "Thank you, Linda," I said, my voice steadier now. "You've given me a lot to think about." She smiled warmly. "Take care of yourself, hon," she said. "You deserve it." I watched her drive away, then turned and walked into the hotel, a new resolve hardening within me. The opulent lobby of the Magnolia Hotel felt like a world away from the chaotic scene at the airport. Checking in, I made sure to request a quiet room away from the elevators. I needed peace, solitude, a chance to gather my thoughts. As I rode the elevator up to my room, I thought about what Linda had said. "Take care of yourself." The words resonated with a power I hadn't expected. For so long, I had relied on my family, on their support, their presence. But what if I didn't need them? What if I was stronger than I thought? The hotel room was spacious and elegant, with a large window overlooking the city. I stood there for a moment, gazing out at the twinkling lights, a strange sense of anticipation bubbling up inside me. This surgery, this recovery, it was going to be different. I wasn't going to lean on anyone. I was going to do this on my own. I unpacked my bag slowly, methodically, a sense of purpose settling over me. I called the hospital to confirm my surgery time. My voice clear and steady, I ordered room service, choosing a light meal, focusing on nourishing my body. Later, as I lay in the plush king-size bed, the city lights painting shadows on the ceiling, I couldn't help but smile. Rachel and Kevin had thought they were abandoning me, leaving me helpless and alone. But they were wrong. They had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of all, the realization that I was capable of so much more than I had ever given myself credit for. This surgery wasn't just about fixing my physical health. It was about reclaiming my life, about forging a new path, one where I was the one in control. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew deep down that I was going to be just fine. In fact, I might even surprise myself. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. The muted hum of the Dallas hotel air conditioner was a stark contrast to the roaring in my ears. 37 years. 37 years I'd put them first. Rachel, Kevin, Mom, Dad, always their needs, always their emergencies. Carol, can you cover my shift? Carol, can you spot me some cash? Carol, can you just? And I always did. Always. Now, here I was, the night before a major surgery, utterly alone. I looked out at the twinkling city lights, a lump forming in my throat. The sterile room felt miles away from the comforting chaos of home. Even though home hadn't felt very comforting lately, I ran a hand through my hair, the cool strands a small comfort. Earlier, at the airport, I'd watched Rachel and Kevin walk away, their excuses echoing in the terminal. "Sorry, Carol. Gotta run," Rachel had said, not even meeting my eyes. "Yeah, something came up," Kevin mumbled, fiddling with his phone. They hadn't even offered a weak hug, just gone. Left me standing there, with my pre-op anxieties and overflowing suitcase. Their sudden departure had been a slap in the face, harder than any they'd given me as kids. This time, though, it wasn't childish squabbles or teenage drama. This was my health, my future, and they just lived. I'd managed to get myself to the hotel, checked in, and now here I was, staring into the abyss of my own reflection in the darkened window. The reflection of a woman who had always prioritized everyone else. A woman who had been the glue holding her family together. A woman who, it seemed, was easily discarded. "They'll call," I'd told myself at the airport. "They'll realize what they've done." But the hours ticked by, the silence growing heavier with each passing minute. My phone lay on the nightstand, mockingly silent. I'd been tempted to call, to scream, to cry, to beg them to come back. But something stopped me, a small, flickering ember of defiance. "No," I whispered, the word barely audible above the hum of the air conditioner. "No more." I reached for the remote, flicking through the channels, trying to distract myself. A cooking show flashed across the screen, then a sitcom, then a news report about a local charity event. And that's when it hit me. All those years, all that giving, all that caretaking for what? Had I actually helped them? Or had I simply enabled their irresponsibility, allowed them to lean on me so heavily that they never learned to stand on their own 2 feet? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. I had always prided myself on being there for my family, on being the dependable one. But now, looking back, I saw a pattern of enabling, of rescuing them from their own messes. Rachel, constantly hopping between jobs, always needing a loan. Kevin, with his string of failed business ventures, always needing a place to crash. And me, always there to pick up the pieces. "Fool," I muttered, the word laced with self-recrimination. I'd built my life round supporting them, round being the strong one. And in doing so, I'd neglected myself, my own needs, my own dreams. I'd poured all my energy into their bottomless wells, leaving myself empty. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, a deep bone-tired weariness that had nothing to do with the upcoming surgery. It was the exhaustion of years of carrying the weight of their expectations, their demands, their failures. I closed my eyes, letting the fatigue wash over me, and in that darkness, a flicker of something new began to emerge. Not anger, Not resentment, but a quiet resolve. I opened my eyes, the city lights now blurring through a film of unshed tears. But this time, the tears weren't just of sadness. They were tears of realization, of a dawning understanding. I didn't need them. I'd always believed that family was everything, that their support was essential. But now, facing this challenge alone, I saw a strength within myself that I'd never recognized before, a strength that had been buried beneath layers of obligation and self-sacrifice. I reached for my phone again, this time with a purpose. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to beg for their support. I was going to handle this on my own. I was going to have this surgery, recover, and rebuild my life, and I was going to do it without them. The thought, once terrifying, now filled me with a strange sense of peace. I scrolled through my contacts, pausing on Julian's name. He'd proposed just a few weeks ago, his eyes shining with love and promise. "I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion. At the time, I'd been overjoyed, swept away by the romance of it all. But now, a sliver of doubt crept in. Had I been so eager to accept his proposal because I was subconsciously seeking someone to lean on, to fill the void left by my family's constant neediness? I shook my head, pushing the thought away. Julian was different. He was kind, supportive, and genuinely cared about me. He wouldn't abandon me like Rachel and Kevin had. Still, a small voice whispered in the back of my mind, urging me to be cautious, to not rely on anyone too much. I decided to call him, not to complain about my family, but to hear his voice, to feel the reassurance of his love. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Carol, how are you feeling?" he asked, his concern evident. "A little nervous," I admitted, "but I'll be okay." We talked for a while, him sharing stories about his day, me listening and feeling the tension slowly ease from my shoulders. He didn't offer empty platitudes or try to fix things. He just listened, his presence a silent comfort in the quiet hotel room. After we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I wasn't completely alone. I had Julian, and I had myself, and that was enough, more than enough. I looked out at the city lights again, the twinkling now seeming less like a distant, unreachable dream and more like a promise of a new beginning, a beginning where I would finally put myself first, where I would build a life based on my own strength and independence, a life where I wouldn't need anyone's permission, anyone's approval, anyone's rescue, a life where I would finally be free. The surgery was tomorrow, and a flicker of anticipation, almost excitement, began to grow alongside the fear. This was it, my chance to start over, my chance to finally take control, and I wouldn't let anything or anyone stand in my way. The muted Dallas sunrise filtered through the hotel room curtains. I methodically folded my clothes, placing them in the designated drawer, a small act of order in a world that felt suddenly chaotic. My surgery was scheduled for later that morning, a surgery I had anticipated with both trepidation and a quiet hope for a better future. But the events of the previous day had cast a long shadow over everything. "I can't believe they just left me," I whispered to the empty room, the sting of betrayal fresh. My own sister, Rachel, and brother, Kevin, had abandoned me at the airport. their excuses flimsy and transparent. "We have prior commitments," Rachel had said, her eyes avoiding mine. Kevin, ever the echo, had simply mumbled, "Yeah, what she said." They were supposed to be my support system, my family. And now, here I was alone in a city far from home, facing a major surgery without a single familiar face. I walked over to the small desk and double-checked the paperwork, the consent forms, the insurance details. Everything in order, I murmured, a strange sense of calm settling over me. This unexpected solitude, initially a source of immense pain, was now morphing into something else. It was as though their abandonment had inadvertently severed a cord of dependence I hadn't realized was binding me. For 37 years, I had been the caretaker, the one everyone leaned on. Maybe, I thought, this is a chance to finally care for myself. The idea felt foreign, almost rebellious. I was so accustomed to putting others first, to anticipating their needs, to smoothing over their anxieties. My life had been a tapestry woven with threads of obligation and self-sacrifice. But what about my own needs? The question hung in the air, unanswered for far too long. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, yes, but there was also a flicker of something new in her eyes, a spark of resolve. I opened my suitcase and carefully laid out my toiletries: shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, the small comforts that felt strangely grounding in this unfamiliar setting. As I arranged them on the bathroom counter, I started to mentally rehearse the post-surgery instructions the doctor had given me. Rest, elevate, ice. I repeated under my breath, the words a mantra of self-care. This was my surgery, my recovery, my responsibility, and for the first time, it felt strangely empowering. A knock on the door startled me. It was the hotel staff with the breakfast I had ordered the night before. "Good morning, Mum," the young man said with a smile. "Just your continental breakfast." "Thank you," I replied, returning his smile. It was a small interaction, but it felt like a connection, a reminder that there was kindness in the world, even when family failed to provide it. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, focusing on the present moment. The fear of the surgery was still there, a dull ache in the pit of my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of purpose. I would face this challenge alone, and in doing so, I would prove something not just to my family, but to myself. I was stronger than I had ever realized. After breakfast, I took a long, hot shower, letting the water wash away the remaining vestiges of anxiety. As I dried myself, I caught sight of a small, framed photograph on the bathroom counter. It was a picture of Carol Evans and Julian, taken on their engagement day. They looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. A pang of longing shot through me. I wanted that kind of happiness, that kind of unwavering support. But I also knew deep down that I couldn't rely on others to provide it. I had to create it for myself. I dressed slowly, carefully choosing the clothes I would wear to the hospital. I opted for a simple, comfortable outfit, something that made me feel both strong and at ease. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw not a victim of circumstance, but a survivor. "I can do this," I said to my reflection, the words a quiet affirmation. "I can do this alone." I gathered my belongings, making sure I had everything I needed for the hospital. My purse, my phone, the pre-admission paperwork, the small book I had brought to read during the waiting periods. As I placed the items in my bag, I noticed a small, velvet pouch tucked away in the corner of my suitcase. It was a gift from my grandmother, a small token of good luck she had given me years ago. I had almost forgotten about it. I opened the pouch and took out the small, silver charm inside. It was a tiny, intricately carved hummingbird, its wings outstretched in flight. I held it in my palm for a moment, feeling its smooth coolness against my skin. It was a reminder of strength, of resilience, of the ability to overcome even the most daunting challenges. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, tucking the charm into my pocket. It was a small piece of hope, a tangible symbol of the strength I was discovering within myself. I was ready. I left the hotel room, stepping out into the bright Dallas morning. The air was crisp and cool, a refreshing contrast to the sterile environment of the hospital that awaited me. As I walked towards the waiting taxi, I felt a sense of anticipation, a sense of purpose. This surgery was not just a medical procedure. It was a turning point. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where I would finally prioritize my own well-being, my own happiness. And I knew, with a certainty that surprised even myself, that I would emerge from this experience stronger and more independent than ever before. This was my journey, and I was ready to take it, alone but not defeated. The faintest hint of a smile touched my lips. This wasn't how I had envisioned this day unfolding, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was exactly how it needed to be. The thought of what the future held, now that I was truly on my own, both terrified and exhilarated me. The Dallas skyline blurred through the Uber window, a strange mix of comfort and anxiety swirling in my stomach. "Hospital, right, Ahmed?" my driver asked, his voice kind. I nodded, clutching my small overnight bag. "Big day." "Yes," I replied, my voice catching. My daughter Carol Evans and her fiancé Julian were supposed to be with me, but I trailed off, not wanting to rehash the whole sorry saga. "Family, eh?" Ahmed chuckled sadly. "Sometimes they're the ones who let you down the most." His words struck a chord. I hadn't wanted to admit it, not even to myself, but a part of me had known, deep down, that relying on Carol and Julian was a gamble. I'd spent 37 years being the caretaker, the dependable one. Now, facing major surgery, I'd hoped foolishly, perhaps that they would finally step up. "Actually," I said, forcing a lighter tone, "they're not able to make it. Last-minute thing." Ahmed nodded understandingly. "Happens. I had back surgery a few years back. My own brother promised he'd be there. Didn't show. Said his car broke down. Later found out he was at a football game." He shook his head, a wry smile on his face. "You learn who your real family is in times like these." His story, though different from mine, resonated deeply. I'd poured so much of myself into my family, always putting their needs before my own. Had I made a mistake? Had I inadvertently taught them to take me for granted? The ride continued in comfortable silence, the city lights giving way to the sterile glow of the hospital complex. "Here we are," Ahmed announced, pulling up to the entrance. "You got this," he added, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "You're stronger than you think." His simple words of encouragement from a complete stranger felt surprisingly powerful. I paid him, adding a generous tip. "Thank you, Ahmed," I said sincerely, "for the ride and for the pep talk." He grinned. "Anytime." "And hey," he called out as I stepped onto the curb, "good luck with the surgery. You'll be back on your feet in no time." The automatic doors slid open, engulfing me in the hushed atmosphere of the hospital. I took a deep breath, the antiseptic smell familiar from countless visits over the years, usually for others. This time, it was different. This time, I was here for myself. A strange sense of calm settled over me. No frantic calls to Carol, no anxious texts to Julian. Just me. I checked in at the reception desk, the nurse's voice a soothing balm. "Everything's ready for you, Mrs. Evans," she said, handing me a wristband. "Just follow me." As I walked down the sterile hallway, the weight of the past few days began to lift. The hurt, the betrayal, the fear, it was all still there, simmering beneath the surface. But something else was emerging, something stronger, a sense of self-reliance I hadn't realized I possessed. For so long, I'd defined myself by my role as a mother, a sister, a caregiver. Now, stripped of those labels, I was discovering who I was at my core, and I was starting to like what I saw. The nurse led me to a small, brightly lit room. "The doctor will be with you shortly," she said, offering a reassuring smile. "Is there anything you need in the meantime?" I shook my head. "No, thank you, I'm fine." And I was, truly, for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I knew the surgery wouldn't be easy, the recovery even harder, but I also knew I could handle it. Alone, I sat on the edge of the bed, gazing out the window at the Dallas skyline. The city lights twinkled like a million tiny promises. Promises of a new chapter, a new beginning, a life where I put myself first, a life where I relied on my own strength, my own resilience. A small smile played on my lips. Carol and Julian might have thought they were abandoning me, but in reality, they had unknowingly set me free. The irony wasn't lost on me. This surgery, this experience, was going to be more than just a physical healing. It was a rebirth, and I was ready. The doctor entered the room, a warm smile on his face. "Ready, Mrs. Evans?" he asked. I met his gaze, my own smile unwavering. "More than ready, doctor. This was my time, my turn, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold me back." This unexpected solitude felt empowering, like the beginning of something grand, something I couldn't quite define yet, but something that whispered of a future brighter than I'd ever imagined. A future where I was the architect of my own happiness, a future built not on dependence, but on the solid foundation of my own strength and newfound independence. The pre-op area of the Dallas hospital was a hive of quiet activity. Nurses bustled around, their voices hushed but efficient. I watched them, a strange calm settling over me. Just a few days ago, I had pictured Rachel and Kevin here, fussing over me, offering awkward words of comfort. Instead, I was alone, clutching my small overnight bag. Carol Evans, a nurse with kind eyes and a warm smile, called out. "Yes," I answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "Right this way, please." We'll get you settled in and prepped for surgery." She gestured towards a curtained cubicle. "Your surgeon, Dr. Ramirez, will be in to see you shortly." As I settled onto the narrow bed, the reality of the situation began to sink in. I was truly doing this alone. No frantic calls from Rachel, no clumsy attempts at humor from Kevin. Just me. A wave of sadness washed over me, a dull ache in my chest. "Here are your gown and some information about post-op care," the nurse said, interrupting my thoughts. "Please change and let me know if you have any questions." She smiled again, a reassuring presence in the sterile environment. I changed into the flimsy gown, the thin material offering little comfort against the cool air. I thought about the years I had spent caring for my family, putting their needs before my own. Rachel with her endless drama, Kevin with his constant financial woes. I had always been there, the dependable one, the one they could always count on. "And how are we feeling today, Miss Evans, Doctor?" Ramirez's voice startled me. He was a tall man with a reassuringly firm handshake. "A bit nervous," I admitted, "but ready." He smiled. "That's the spirit. This is a routine procedure. You'll be back on your feet in no time." His confidence was infectious, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was exactly what I needed. A chance to prove to myself, and maybe even to them, that I could handle things on my own. "Do you have any questions?" Dr. Ramirez asked, breaking into my thoughts. "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I think I'm ready." He nodded, made a few notes on his chart, and excused himself. The nurse returned shortly after, pushing an IV stand. "We're just going to get this started," she explained gently, inserting the needle into my arm with practiced ease. As the cool fluid flowed into my veins, I closed my eyes, taking deep, even breaths. This was it. No turning back. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparations and hushed conversations. Nurses came and went, checking my vitals, asking questions, offering reassurances. I answered their questions politely, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the future, about what my life would look like after this. Would I go back to being the ever-reliable caregiver, or would I finally carve out a space for myself, a life free from the expectations and demands of others? As they wheeled me towards the operating room, I saw a familiar face in the hallway. Julian. He stood there, looking anxious, his eyes searching the crowd. He hadn't called or texted since I'd left for Dallas, and seeing him now, a strange mix of anger and relief washed over me. "Julian," I called out weakly, my voice barely a whisper. He turned, his face lighting up with relief when he saw me. He rushed over to my side, his hand reaching for mine. "Carol, thank God. I was so worried. I didn't know where you were." His voice was thick with emotion. I tried calling, but I pulled my hand away, a cold resolve hardening my gaze. "I'm fine, Julian," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm handling things." His brow furrowed in confusion. "Your family, I thought they were here with you." I looked at him, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "They had other plans," I said, my voice laced with a newfound steel. "But as you can see, I'm managing just fine." He stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. The nurses started to wheel me away, and I offered him a small, almost pitying smile. "Don't worry about me, Julian," I said, my voice echoing down the sterile hallway. "I've got this." And as they pushed me through the double doors of the operating room, I knew, with a certainty that surprised even myself, that I did. I had absolutely got this. The thought of the substantial investment account I had quietly been building over the past few years, an account they knew nothing about, warmed me like a secret fire. It was a nest egg, safety net, and a symbol of my own quiet rebellion. It was my plan, and they were completely oblivious. The crisp, sterile air of the pre-op room in Dallas Presbyterian Hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic. Dr. Martinez, a kind-faced woman with warm brown eyes, entered, her smile reassuring. "Carol Evans," she said, glancing at her chart. "Everything looks good. Are you ready?" I nodded, trying to appear calm, but butterflies flitted in my stomach. "Just one thing, doctor," I said, my voice a bit shaky. "I've made some changes to my post-op arrangements." Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Changes?" she asked gently. "We had you down for family pickup and home care assistance." I took a deep breath, the image of my sister Rachel and brother Kevin abandoning me at the airport flashing before my eyes. "Yes, well," I started. "That's no longer necessary. I've arranged for a car service to take me to a recovery suite, and I've hired a private nurse." A flicker of surprise crossed Dr. Martinez's face, but she quickly composed herself. "I see," she said, studying me intently. "Are you sure you're up for this, Carol? Recovering from this procedure alone can be challenging." "I'm quite sure, doctor," I replied, a newfound steel in my voice. "I've handled a lot in my life. This is just another hurdle." It wasn't entirely true. This felt different, bigger, a turning point. But the memory of their callous disregard fueled my resolve. Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. "Well, as long as you're confident," she said. "We want you to have the best possible recovery experience. If you change your mind, we can certainly reinstate the previous arrangements." I shook my head. "No, thank you, doctor. This is what I want." The truth was, I didn't just want this. I needed it. I needed to prove to myself, more than anyone else, that I could manage. For 37 years, I had poured my life into caring for my family, neglecting my own needs. My surgery, ironically, became the catalyst for my liberation. "All right then," Dr. Martinez said, a small smile playing on her lips. "We'll proceed as planned. The nurse will be in shortly to prep you." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You know, Carol," she said, her voice softer now, "sometimes the strongest thing we can do is rely on ourselves." Her words resonated deeply. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I offered a weak smile in return. "Thank you, doctor." After she left, the nurse came in, bustling around with IVs and monitors. I closed my eyes, letting her work, my mind racing with the logistics of my plan. The recovery suite was booked, the nurse hired, the car service arranged. Everything was in place. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, but beneath it, a current of exhilaration pulsed. I was doing this alone. The next few hours were a blur, The surgery went smoothly, Dr. Martinez informed me later, and I woke up in the plush comfort of the recovery suite. My private nurse, a cheerful woman named Maria, was by my side, ensuring I had everything I needed. The suite, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital room, felt like a sanctuary. It was spacious, with large windows overlooking the city, and decorated in calming shades of blue and green. It felt like a reward, a haven I had created for myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Over the next few days, Maria meticulously cared for me, her cheerful demeanor a welcome distraction from the discomfort of recovery. I spent my time reading, watching movies, and simply enjoying the quiet solitude. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I had anticipated. The frantic calls from family, the constant stream of visitors. This quiet, this independence, was exactly what I needed to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maria brought me my medication. "You're doing remarkably well, Carol," she said, handing me a glass of water. "Much better than most patients recovering from this procedure." I smiled. "Thank you, Maria. I feel stronger than I thought." "That's the spirit," Maria chuckled. "You know, sometimes the best medicine is realizing you don't need anyone but yourself." Her words echoed Dr. Martinez's, solidifying the lesson I had learned. This experience, born out of betrayal, had become a journey of self-discovery. I had faced my fears, embraced my independence, and emerged stronger than ever. The following week, I received a call from Julian. "Carol, darling, how are you feeling?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "I've been trying to reach you. Rachel and Kevin said you'd discharge yourself. They were worried sick." I could hear the strain in his voice, the underlying tension. They hadn't been worried. They had been avoiding the responsibility they so readily shirked at the airport. "I'm recovering well, Julian," I replied calmly. "I decided to handle things on my own." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "On your own," he finally repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "But I realized I'm capable of taking care of myself," I said, my voice firm. "I don't need anyone else." Another silence, heavier this time. Then Julian cleared his throat. "Well, that's good," he stammered. "I'll let Rachel and Kevin know." "Please do," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. This was my revenge. Not a grand, dramatic gesture, but a quiet, powerful act of self-reliance. They had underestimated me, dismissed me as someone who needed their help. They were wrong. I had found my strength not in their presence, but in their absence. And now, as I looked out at the city lights twinkling below, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next. I had a feeling my newfound independence might just surprise them all, especially when they learned about the little something I'd been working on during my recovery. Something that involved a certain timeshare in Aspen, coincidentally booked for the week of Christmas. But that, my dear viewers, is a story for another time. The bright, sterile lights of the Dallas operating room blurred as the anesthesiologist leaned over me. "Just breathe deeply, Mrs. Evans," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. I closed my eyes, The antiseptic smell sharp in my nostrils. Breathed deeply. It was strange, almost comical, that after all these years of taking care of everyone else, I was finally the one being taken care of. And not by my family, not by Carol Evans, not by Julian, by strangers. Just a few weeks ago, I'd been frantically packing, arranging for Carol Evans's wedding dress to be shipped, confirming Julian's accommodations, coordinating with the florist, all while recovering from a fall that had left me needing this surgery. My sister Rachel and my brother Kevin had promised to be there to help with the wedding preparations, to be my support system while I recovered. Everything will be fine, Rachel had assured me. We'll be there every step of the way. Kevin had echoed her sentiments. Don't you worry about a thing. Empty words, hollow promises. They'd abandon me at the airport. Their excuses flimsy and transparent. Rachel had a sudden work emergency, and Kevin's back went out. Their lies stung more than the pain in my hip, but something shifted in me that day at the airport. Standing there, alone amidst the bustling crowds, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was as if a lifetime of carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations had finally lifted. I don't need them, I whispered to myself, the words a revelation. I called Carol Evans, my voice trembling slightly. Honey, there's been a change of plans, I told her, carefully choosing my words. I'm going to handle the surgery on my own. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, in a small voice, Carol Evans said, Mom, are you sure I can postpone the wedding? No, sweetheart, I replied firmly. Your wedding is important. I'll be fine, truly. And I was. I booked a hotel near the hospital, checked myself in, and followed all the pre-op instructions meticulously. No frantic calls to Rachel, no pleading texts to Kevin. Just me. I realized, with a startling clarity, that I'd spent so much time being the caretaker, the responsible one, that I'd forgotten how to take care of myself. This surgery, this experience, was a forced lesson in self-reliance, and I was learning it quickly. The anesthesiologist's voice brought me back to the present. We're starting now, Mrs. Evans. I took one last deep breath and let go. The surgery was successful. The doctors were impressed with my recovery. I walked with a walker at first, then a cane, then nothing at all. Each step I took on my own felt like a small victory, a victory not just over physical pain, but over the emotional pain of betrayal. Carol Evans and Julian visited me often during my recovery. I could see the concern in their eyes, but I reassured them I was doing well. Mom, you're amazing, Carol Evans said, holding my hand. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Honey, I asked. Stronger, she replied. Independent. Julian nodded in agreement. You've handled this whole thing with such grace. Their words were a balm to my soul. I realized they were right. I was stronger. I was independent. And I didn't need anyone to take care of me. I returned home a changed woman. The house felt different. Emptier, perhaps, but also lighter. I'd cleared out a lot of clutter while I was gone, physical clutter. Yes, but also emotional clutter. The resentment I'd felt towards Rachel and Kevin began to fade, replaced by a sense of indifference. They called, of course, offering apologies and explanations. I listened politely, but their words held no weight. It's fine, I told them. Everything worked out. And it had. Better than I could have imagined. Carol Evans and Julian's wedding was beautiful. I walked down the aisle, not with the support of my siblings, but with the support of my own newfound strength. As I watched Carol Evans exchange vows with Julian, I felt a surge of pride and happiness, and a deep sense of gratitude, not for Rachel, not for Kevin, but for myself, for finally learning to stand on my own 2 feet, for discovering the strength I never knew I had. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had thought they were abandoning me. In reality, they had set me free. After the wedding, I received a registered letter. It was from my parents' lawyer. My parents, both deceased, had left me their vacation home in the Bahamas. It was a place filled with happy childhood memories, a place I hadn't visited in years. The letter explained that the property was solely mine, with no mention of Rachel or Kevin. I stared at the document, a slow smile spreading across my face. This wasn't revenge. This was a gift, a symbol of a new beginning, a chance to create new memories, filled with joy and independence. I looked out the window at the clear blue sky. The Bahamas were calling, and I was ready to answer.